I mean, it's Glenn Beck. But for God's sake, this is the one way to fully eradicate far-left indoctrination from our schools. And when he talks about far-left indoctrination, he means anti-bullying and diversity inclusive behavior. And they'll use examples of activist psychopaths who've gone too far with it to act like that the minor level normal humanity parts of anti-bullying and diversity training that's in schools is peppered with that stuff. Again, it's the BLM as an organization versus a movement. The movement is everyone saying Black Lives Matter and understanding what that means. And the organization could be a tick on this dog for all I care. It doesn't matter. It is the same as charity versus Eric Trump's charity, right? Eric Trump can do whatever shit he wants and lose his charity and get in trouble. It doesn't affect my ability to understand why I would want to be charitable in the world, right? It's not hard to figure out unless you're Glenn Beck. A man in search of an image. We were at cowboy shirts for a while. This guy is wearing Stu's shirt all of a sudden. I think there's just a rule about that. Everybody looks sad and aged. I'm not quite sure what they do during their spare time. We'll find out. But this is the one way to fully eradicate far left indoctrination from our schools. There's got to be one. There's only one way. What is it?
The story from Bloomington, Illinois, about this mom taking on a school board because the school system is teaching inappropriate sex lessons to kids as young as third grade.
Yeah, listen to this. Cut 6, please.
She came to your school when she procures bids for ISU with construction and came to your school and spoke to your staff for 2 straight days. Why did she do that? This is why she did that. This is why she did that. To make sure that when our students want to know whether or not they have a or a they have pictures from your staff to be able
Wait a minute. Why are they bleeping out vagina or penis?
to help them. They don't have enough sex. They don't have enough sex. They need adults to tell them how to masturbate. And what I call that is so here's what I'm asking you. You have a hard time hearing this from me, but this is for 10 years old and up, and this bill was passed for 5-year-olds. And you have a hard time me sitting here telling you the words sex, masturbation. That's hard for you, or the time's up? Because the time's not really up. I don't believe you, Mr. Wiley, that my time is up.
Yeah, Mr. Wiley.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is what happens when you say anal in front of Glenn Beck. He just kind of glazes over and gets all deflated. The book is for 10 years old and up, I guess. And the appropriateness of sex ed materials is, this is what Republicans fight for when they don't want a federal standard. This is the whole, states' rights are never more prevalent than when we talk about, like, schools should be decided on the local level. And then when the school decides stuff like that on the local level, they're flipping out. Like, you weren't participating until you could no longer put your kid on autopilot? You didn't check?
I'm telling you, you mess with people's children.
And again, I don't have a problem with this woman talking about what the level of sexuality or sexual engagement is between children. Simply understanding the function of your body is enough sex ed. The rest of the conversation can come from your parents. And if parents aren't going to do that, that's on them. But the basic sex ed is about how the function of your genitals may work, the changes that may occur, and the fact that you can become pregnant from certain activities. That's kind of all you need to teach kids. You don't need to teach them how to use a condom. That's their parents' thing. And I would argue that while that is a necessary part of teaching kids, it is something that the school should engage with the parents about. Going, hey guys, we're teaching sex ed at school. We're not discussing these kind of things. We recommend you have these conversations with your kids in whatever form or fashion you think you should. Right? But the baseline biology of it, we're going to teach them that stuff because that's the least we can do.
Children.
Yeah.
This is where...
My mom worked for a urologist for 12 years. So, I mean, we knew all the words and stuff. I didn't need the school to teach me that kind of stuff, and you shouldn't. But they can tell you the baseline biology, so everybody, it's again, we want people to be able to read so they know how a stop sign works, and that they can have some level of reading comprehension when they're reading a book, so that they can discern from reality and fantasy and what the difference between a fiction and nonfiction book is. What they take from that, or where their expression comes from in that, is not the school's business. And the more it is, the more it directs the business. So that's the concern I always have with that kind of stuff. That's my own personal thing as a parent, and also as somebody who was a student and saw how some of it was taught. This isn't that hard to figure out. But the fact that this one school board is doing that thing, and this is the woman's freak out, which is maybe justified. We haven't seen the whole thing. I don't know that they teach that inappropriately to kids, or if they were pushing it on 5-year-olds, that's maybe where the pushback came, and that's completely reasonable. Why are they taking a book that's for 10 years old and up and teaching it to 5-year-olds? That's inappropriate, right? Then it's less a concern about, is the school board teaching too much or too little about sex ed, and maybe you have someone who is grooming kids at that school, right? That would be point of concern. Is this left wing? No.
Where the left has overplayed their hand.
How is that? And again, how is this the left? That school board is the left?
Messing with people's children. And, you know, I saw that video last night, and as I'm watching it,
I watched it again and again and again and again, and the words just, every time I heard the words, they hit me in a deeper and deeper way. And excuse me.
I thought, you know, we think we're doing enough speaking out. We're not.
No, you're not. Absolutely. Keep speaking out, Glenn. Make sure that I mean, it's, if kids know the technical word for their genitals, you've done something wrong. I blame you. And unless we've got some people grown people calling their hoo-has woo-woos, then, you know, I think you are to blame.
Every single one of those people on the school board, every single one of those principals or whatever, if that's in your school.
How many principals does this school have?
They are responsible.
Right. That's why the parents are at the school board complaining, because it was inappropriately applied. I'm a Democrat. I voted for Joe Biden. I would consider myself a staunch liberal my entire life. I don't support that. Why would you? The fuck are you talking about?
They can say, I didn't know anything about it. Well, you're responsible.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they didn't know anything about it, then how are they the left pushing this thing on your kid? It sounds like to me, you've got a right-wing district with a lot of right-wing parents in it, and they elected people who don't know what the fuck they're doing and who are just rubber stamping shit, and are getting caught doing it. How is this if they don't know what they're doing, then how is this the left? One would think that if it was quote unquote the left, there'd be some greater plan, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody in the chat would object if the curriculum was being taught to people younger than it was intended for, especially when it comes to sex ed.
I'm giving my children to you, and
no, you're not. No, you're not giving them your children.
Telling me that they're in a safe place. Now, I know that you didn't know a shooter might come in. You know, I know you think that it could, but I know you don't know when it's going to happen.
Right. It's hard to schedule those things. It's a good point.
This one is happening all over the country, and
this is a different kind of shooter, though. Sorry. What kind of shooter is he talking about? I thought he meant guns. I think I'm wrong.
You didn't know that it was being taught?
Yeah, it's on page 7. What does a shooter mean?
Taught in your school, you're fired.
Yeah, you tell them, Glenn.
Everybody you need to speak out. But
yes. If your school has a teacher in it that is teaching that level of sex ed meant for 10 years old and above, preteens essentially, and it's got sections of the book probably that are a curriculum book, by the way, that are for different ages, you know, and you're dealing with those age groups and you're reading it or showing it to children that are too young for it, the principal may have a bigger fish to fry in that they have hired a pedophile, and that pedophile is working at the school, and it's probably because, the government can't do anything right, especially when Republicans run it.
But run for school board. You have this at all in your schools.
Yes, be involved with your children's lives. Run for school board, right, left, as long as you're not a psycho anti-vaxxer or a segregationist, in which case you can kind of fuck off. Everybody else, yes, it's your child going to that school. Participate. I do. What in the world is left?
And I don't believe it's not in all of our schools. I'm sorry, I don't. It's
and Glenn hangs out around elementary schools, so he would know.
Too prevalent everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere Glenn looks, there's a picture of a woman showing her vagina with her leg on a chair to a dude showing his penis to her with his leg on a chair, like they're selling brandy in a pirate outfit, and someone's saying anal. Everywhere he goes.
There is a germ of it in all of our schools.
Yes, it's an infection, really. As a matter of fact, and if you want to avoid those kind of infections, you might want to wear a condom. I'm just saying. Is that appropriate?
And it's...
By the way, this is all serious conversation as far as what level kids can be taught sex ed and how engaged parents need to be with this. I take all that very seriously. I don't take Glenn Beck seriously. He's an asshat. So any jokes that I'm making around the subject have more to do with my attitude towards him than the subject itself, just in case you're getting wound up.
It's got to be stopped, and the only way to do it is run for school board.
That's right, run for school board. And then you can have, centerfolds as a way of teaching.
Exactly what happened.
Relentless.
Exactly what happened here in Southlake, where the parents were fed up with critical race theory, and they weren't going to take it, and they weren't taken seriously by the school board. So they got together with some of the parents in the district, and I think 3 of them ran for school board. They all won. They all defeated the school.
Gee, it's almost like it's not hard.
Board that was there.
But that's right, but not.
So this is, I'm proud. I'm not a pedophile. Yes,
every member of the school board. I think they got 3 seats on the school board. I don't know how many school board members there are. And so
I'm glad you looked into it and you care. That's the important thing. You're reporting on stuff, and it's important that you know the details, Glenn.
The old guard is still there. You got to get them all out.
Have to.
Yeah, you got to broom them unless they actually know how to do all the other shit that you don't know how to do. Because once you broom out critical race theory, which probably isn't there, and it's just like anti-bullying, teaching your kid not to be a racist, or just going, hey, you can read a book about a black kid. It's not weird. That's okay. Oh my God, critical race theory.
Unless they were fighting it the whole time and on record fighting it.
Yeah, if they're doing it behind the scenes, no way.
They've all got to go.
Yeah, they got to go. Whoever they are, however many there are, I don't know or care.
Let me give you this. This is
let me give you this. That was chapter 5 in the book. Sorry.
Loudoun County. I mean, Americans are standing up against them.
This is the woman. I think this is the footage of the woman giving the speech in the street about critical race theory. Now, this is the issue that I have with these things is it's hard to tell whether it's real critical race theory, which is probably isn't. That's a philosophy taught mostly in universities, or activities around diversity training, which may have, in theory, come from critical race theory. They believe it's critical race theory creep, or if it's simply just anti-bullying based on race and other stuff, sexual orientation, sexual identity, those kind of things. And we'll see. Well, yeah.
This is an 8th grader in Loudoun County, which is, I think, one of the biggest,
one of the loudest counties
offenders, not of critical race theory and all of this crazy stuff. They're bad. But I think these are the biggest offenders of, I'm better than you. I know more than you as a parent knows.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
And they are hostile to the parents. Here's an 8th grader standing up. Listen.
2 years ago, I was told Policy 1040 was just an umbrella philosophy, and you weren't going to allow boys into the girls' locker rooms. But here you are.
Oh, this is the trans stuff.
Doing just that. Everyone knows what a boy is, even you. Your proposed policies are dangerous and rooted in sexism. When woke kids asked me if I was a lesbian or a trans boy because I cut my hair short, it should tell you these modern identities are superficial. My guidance counselor's response to my concerns about bathroom privacy and safety was, well, there are stalls in the bathrooms. Now boys are reading erotica in the classrooms next to girls, and you want to give them access to girls' locker rooms, and you want to force girls to call those boys she. You do this in the name of inclusivity while ignoring the girls who will pay the price. Your policies choose boys' wants over girls' needs.
But bam! Kapowie! She goes to that school. She might have some legitimate concerns. I don't know what the boys are like. But again, this has nothing to do with trans kids. Nothing. This has to do with people making rules or laws that are meant to help trans kids, but have so much gray area and absolutely no skeletal structure so that straight kids can take advantage of it. That's the fear this girl has. She's not afraid of trans kids. She's afraid the straight boys who are reading porn in her classroom are going to go into the ladies' room, and there's nothing she can do to stop it because they can just say to the teacher they're a girl that day. And there's no rule about it. There's no consistency to it. And so a lot of these kids are afraid. And it's a rational fear to have. And that's why adults when they're crafting laws, have to take things like this into consideration. She's a child. And I'm not going to brand a child with transphobia or say that anything that she's feeling isn't legitimate or that her mom programmed her. I can't know that for sure. And I will stay away from that because she's a kid. However, let's watch Glenn Beck use this child to shore up his point without any of the concerns that I have mentioned.
How do you not listen to that?
Yeah, I mean, he's in love. We're looking at a guy going, she's like a little grown-up.
I mean, this has never been done before.
And she didn't, and by the way, some of the people are saying she's brainwashed or that they led her to believe that thing or whatever. This is a real concern that you have. Like when Mike Huckabee can say outwardly on his show, if I knew that all I had to do was say I was a girl to go into the ladies' room, I'd have done it all the time because he's a creep. And the understanding that there are the BTKs and the Harvey Weinsteins and the Bill Cosbys and the like of this world and the Bill O'Reillys of this world, not understanding that not germane to trans kids at all, there can be people that take advantage of rules and regulations and loopholes in them, especially if they're as broadly written and as poorly crafted as a lot of these are. It's damaging not only to girls who are putting that in that situation, but it's also damaging to trans kids because it peppers them with the bullshit of these genuine, when they say biological males competing in girls' sports, biological males coming into the ladies' room, that's a legit fear, not about trans people at all. It has nothing to do with trans people any more than Rachel Dolezal is black people's responsibility. Black people are not responsible for the Rachel Dolezals of the world at all. But crafting rules that allow for the Rachel Dolezals of the world to get scholarships meant for black people, for example, would be an affront to black people. And the same thing is true about trans bathroom rules, trans rights, and trans sports issues. That unless there's some baseline standard, and it will take some crafting and some real thought and some engagement with the trans community, because they don't want to be taken advantage of either. You don't want some straight dude using the lax laws to take advantage of that and pinning that on trans people as if it's their fucking problem when it's not. So this girl and her fears about the boys she knows in her class who are sexualized males, who identify as males, being able to take advantage of the rules in the school to go into the girls' room is, again, nothing to do with trans people. That has to do with the adults in this circumstance not thinking it through enough. And the answer, obviously, in schools is that there needs to be a gender-neutral bathroom. but teenagers gonna teenage. And if I had a gender neutral bathroom when I was dating in high school, it would have been basically an orgy until somebody showed up. Honestly, you have to think about this stuff because you don't want it to be long-term damaging to the trans community, of which, 0.005% of the populace is trans. But there's a much bigger percentage of biological male and biological females who identify as male and identify as female who are sexual predators or growing into it or will engage in behavior that is, ethically sexually wrong. And what they do when they take advantage of those rules and act in that way is not the fault of trans people. And if you don't craft these laws with some sense that those people can exist, it's damaging to the people who get attacked or the people who feel harassed or terrorized by the fact that it could be a potential thing, and trans kids. You have to take it seriously. That's parents letting their boys be boys. No, it's boys are out of your hands. They're at school. And if the school is setting up a place where they can smoke, kids are going to go smoke. It's the school's responsibility. And the teacher, boys, parents, whatever, they might not even be in there having sex with someone who doesn't want it. That's the thing. They can follow. I would have gone into the bathroom with my girlfriend if I was allowed to, and we would have had sex in the stalls if we'd have gotten away with it. And if the teacher couldn't even come in because they had no right to ask me if I had the right to be there, they could have never stopped it. That's it. Do you understand? There is more depth of thought in this. This is not simple bigotry. What Glenn Beck is doing is simple bigotry. Glenn Beck is taking advantage of the genuine fears or concerns in the communities where they're dealing with this issue, and we're growing through this as a society and trying to figure out how to, navigate, manage this. And Glenn Beck is using this as a way of furthering his bigotry, because the people setting the rules around trans kids and the protective stuff around trans kids are doing it in a set it and forget it way. They are not doing it with the trans kids' best interests in heart. They're not doing it with straight kids' best interests in hearts. They're not protecting girls from boys and boys from girls in normal settings. They're doing it in a way that will catch them the least amount of flack from the community. You have to think this shit through. And if you don't, you create these situations where sexual assaults will happen that have nothing to do, again, with trans kids at all, but because the rules are the rules and we can't even touch on that, Glenn Beck will run a whole segment about a girl who's sexually assaulted in the girls' room because the teachers couldn't even go in and ask why that boy was in there. That's the issue. And by the way, it is 0.005%, and it's not because I don't count non-binary people, because that's another issue entirely. Non-binary people are not trans. You have to be transing to be trans. There's another word for it if you want to call them non-binary people, whatever, but they're not trans. Trans is you're transitioning. It has to matter, or otherwise you're not even calling them that for the reason, and it undermines trans people. Because if non-binary people take the trans name, then basically they're just saying that I know you think you're swimming across the ocean and it's taking all the effort because you were born on the wrong side of the sea, but midway through the ocean, I'm going to walk up to you and go, there are no beaches, you're just swimming, you're treading water, you're just going to die here. It's a terrible thing to say to trans people. Yes, you can identify as trans without medical transition, no question, but you have to be transing. You have to be actually transitioning from one thing to another. If you argue that the binary doesn't exist, in its own way, it negates trans people's existence. You can be who you want to be, but non-binary basically denotes that trans people don't exist or live in some sort of, fantasy. It downplays their existence. That's a huge conversation. And again, see how sticky and complicated this is? And it should be. It should require some thought. And there should be some free discussion about it. Because when you don't, when you're so afraid that you're going to be called out for being anti-something or other when you're trying to work through what it actually means, then what you do is you set up the Glenn Becks of the world to fuck with trans people. and put it all on them. And if a school board can't figure out that you can't just let a straight kid say they're something else so they can go in the other bathroom because they're feeling curious that day as far as the ability to look at some other kid's genitals without asking, especially when there are urinals in the boys' room. If you can't handle that, you shouldn't be on a school board. And if you can handle that, and it is your responsibility to make sure that the rules are set to some distinction. School counselors are made aware of who the trans kids are. You need to talk to somebody before you go into the other bathroom because we want to know if you're serious or not serious. And you need to talk, if you can't express yourself, then your expression isn't something that's eating away with it. You just go to the genital specific bathroom because apparently the rest of it doesn't matter. You should go into the bathroom to use the bathroom. But if it's about fear or whether or not you fit in, you need to have a conversation with somebody about it. Because we can't just have a rule where hour by hour you can make up your own rules because it's scaring the shit out of that little girl. And there's lots of girls like her. It matters. So I just need to bring that up. And it always pisses me off when school boards and businesses and other stuff stiff arm this conversation because they don't want to catch hell for trying to go, who's really trans and who's not? And have some asshole activist go, how dare you even ask? And we're like, well, we have a sign over the bathroom. We have limited resources. We can't make a bathroom for all 56 genders. And there's no reason why you shouldn't go into the genital specific bathroom you have. Like that's, if it doesn't matter, then go into there. Stop bothering everybody. It doesn't matter. It's performative, it's expressive, but it doesn't actually interfere with your ability to carry on. And that's why it matters. But if you don't care about this, then you're just letting dickheads like this determine the conversation. And it puts girls in danger. It really does.
It's never been done before. At least, outside of biblical days. This has not been done by societies. We have no idea the effects of our children. But I got to tell you.
Wait a minute. Do they have sex ed? Was there sex ed in the Old Testament? I mean, besides Lot's daughters getting him drunk and fucking him after he and his wife and his daughters were the only people worth saving from the city. God certainly is a bad judge of character at times.
I was a boy at one point. And if I could have been in the shower room while they were showering.
See what I mean?
I probably would have been there, but I wouldn't have wanted to be naked for a very obvious reason.
Yes, because they would all start laughing.
I mean, this is insane. This is really insane.
The lack of concern for girls.
Go ahead.
Is the lack of concern for a 14-year-old girl like that who's begging them, who's pleading, please don't do this to us. They don't care about her safety at all. What has happened to women's rights? They're completely gone now.
No, they're not.
And it's these dudes who care about women's rights.
They're not completely gone. They're just been collectivized. So this little girl.
So bring it back to Marxism.
Okay, so what? She's uncomfortable or maybe she's raped. Well, take one for the team because it's good for the collective.
Yeah, that's how lefties think about this. Look, having a gap in your concern point because you're focused on a solution that you see right in front of you and not considering the other possibilities, or presuming that human beings will interact between each other in at least a baseline, decent, and ethical way, and that there will be, the same number of sexual assaults in a school as there are, and you still work on them the same way if you allow this kind of thing to happen, is an understandable concern, especially when you're an activist and you're working on a solution to a particular problem. That's a long way from shrugging off a sexual assault of an 8th grader because collectivists want this. Again, this is what I'm talking about. This is what Glenn Beck, this is the state of humanity, according to Glenn Beck.
This is what's happening. You are losing your individual right. The left keeps their individual right to be offended by anything and everything.
And by the way, Glenn Beck is very offended at all this.
But if you
non-binary genders fall under the trans umbrella. I disagree. I mean, it's more of a, it doesn't matter as far as their rights or ability to live as they want to live, but non-binary to some degree negates trans. If you're not transitioning, you're not trans. If you're in the middle somewhere and you're happy paddling in the middle of the ocean, it's how you live, nothing wrong with that, but you're not trans in that regard. Transition is such an enormous weight on people that saying midway through it, you can just kind of put a pin in it and forget about it. It lines up more with Christian conversion therapy than it does with open rights for trans people.
You disagree with
That's my own personal opinion as far as trans people. Yeah, that's okay. I know I'm disagreeing with a non-binary person, Jess, but you're not trans. That's the thing. Honest to God, it's okay. You could be who you are, but they don't necessarily overlap. It's like in in the LGB, the concept are lesbians gay or are they lesbians? It's kind of a immaterial point until you start dealing with limited rights and for each and how they're trying to bring them all together.
You don't have a right. You don't have a right. You're part of the problem. You can't be offended by this. You just don't know. You're a bigot. You're a white person. You're whatever.
You're a chubby Colonel Sanders.
Here's the same county. Here is a coach addressing the same school board.
My name is Tanner Cross, and I'm speaking out.
Well, it's the same problem. Of course, you're going to have the same people talking to the same group about the same issue.
Love for those who suffer with gender dysphoria. 60 Minutes this past Sunday interviewed over 30 young people who transitioned, but they felt led astray because lack of pushback or how easy it was to make physical changes to their
60 Minutes did a special on detransitioners. That's what he's referring
bodies
to.
In just 3 months. They are now detransitioning. It's not my intention to hurt anyone, but there are certain truths that we must face when ready. We condemn school policies like 80-40 and 80-35 because it will damage children, defile the holy image of God. I love all of my students.
Defile the holy image of God. How? So God's creation is limited only to what fits within your narrow view of what's possible.
But I will never lie.
Have you ever seen, like, galaxies, clouds? I mean, Komodo dragons, platypuses?
To them regardless of the consequences. I'm a teacher, but I serve God first, and I will not affirm that a biological boy can be a girl and vice versa because it's against my religion. It's lying.
Yeah, but so what?
To a child.
Just go back to teaching math. It's none of your goddamn business.
It's abuse to a child, and it's sinning against our God.
This coach, by the way, was suspended.
They don't have a God team anymore. The Lightning team was shut down. He's a coach,
and a judge intervened and reinstalled him in his job. So there's a couple of things that have happened here that seem like, okay, maybe we're still in this fight, because usually judges decide on the part of the insane and make sure that the guy stays fired. But in his case, he was reinstated. So there is some hope.
Think this is all you have. There is hope, but you're.
And again, this has nothing to do with trans people in this regard, or even non-binary people in this regard. They want to pin this on them. They want to pin this on non-binary kids and trans kids, but they don't want to, and they want to make any transgression by a straight kid against another straight kid, or I guess technically against a non-binary or trans kid or a gay kid, that happens somehow on the backs of trans kids, when this is behavior that they both say that they would have engaged in as straight kids. Instead of going, maybe, teach children not to act that way. But also the school has a responsibility to make sure that, their safety precautions against parents, like, the people who apparently raised Glenn Beck, who would let this slide.
But you remember, This is all going to be collectivized.
Yes, it all goes back to Marxism.
And they're going to take all these decisions and say, yep, that's why we need, new Supreme Court. That's why we need to change these judges, because look at how insane. And at that point, if America doesn't rise up, it will be over.
All right. Well, tell you what, when it's over, you let us know, Glenn. And sport. Do we call him sport from now on? I just feel the need. I don't know where it comes from.
But you're right. For the first time, enough judges are willing to stand up and say, not in this courtroom, not in this courtroom. And thank God for those brave men and women.
I'm honest to God, I don't know. They hit this every time, and everything leads back to Marxism as the serial point on it. All right, that's the end of the show for today. And by the way, if you disagree with me on the terminology aspects of things, you're completely open to doing that. What you need to know, though, primarily is that the rights and privileges that humanity offers everyone, especially under the Constitution, should apply evenly no matter how someone expresses themselves in the world, whether you like it or you don't. And and ultimately my biggest concern when it comes to trans and non-binary kids is they are protected and not bullied and have every opportunity to shine as brightly as they possibly can. End of conversation. Whether or not that separates them into two groups or overlaps them is sort of an immaterial. It's a philosophical discussion. But if you can't have the philosophical discussion about it and try to make a material difference where it does matter as far as kids interacting with each other in flagrante delicto, if you can't deal with that part and the concerns of other kids, then you allow the conversation to be co-opted by the Glenn Becks of the world. That's my point. There you go. And so, just all face, we adore you. I don't want you to think that I'm denigrating your existence. As a matter of fact, I think it wholly is special in and of itself. It need no other label in attachment, nor need it, in your mind, divide it from another label. Doesn't need to. It simply doesn't. It is, we are here to support you in your existence, not in your label or your lack thereof. That's just the reality. The only problem I have is the Glenn Becks of the world taking that label or misusing those labels and excusing the crimes of people who have nothing to do with these groups of people and using that to deny these folks' rights because of the behaviors that they perceive straight kids will participate in. Because I actually have hope that most teenagers will, and myself included, like I said, I may have snuck into the girls' bathroom, but with my girlfriend, not on my own, just like barging in and looking around. And if you have a kid like that, they're going to get expelled no matter what their behavior point is, because they can't lie that well. That's just the nature of life. But it's the school board's responsibility and the parents' responsibility to act in accordance so that bad kids like that don't deny rights or privileges or abilities to trans and non-binary kids. There you go. I hope that clarifies things. And I'm speaking genuinely. So, and I do it out of care for the groups of people that I am mentioning. So there you go.